From the very beginning, my multi-interest in both the electronics and the programming side of radio was very advantageous in pursuing my radio career. To be able to figure out how to build an audio mixer board at 12 years old by building 4 audio amplifier kits, then running the separate audio input links up to a common 4-volume control board, and tying the 4 audio outputs together, well, looking back, I think it was near genius. Maybe not genius, but pretty smart for a 12-year-old. Particularly when getting a real audio mixer board would have been impossible money-wise. But it did require a lot of work building those 4 audio amp kits and then wiring them in just the right manner to make a mixer board. And then putting a VU or volume meter on the mixer board to show how loud the audio signal was. But then wiring it to the transmitter at just the right volume level was touchy and ultimately required the addition of a special control just for that. If the signal from the mixer board to the transmitter was too loud, the transmitter audio would be distorted. If it were too weak, the radio signal would get lost in the noise. So I would listen to a regular station on my radio receiver, then tune it quickly to my station and try to compare the 2 audio levels. If the other station was louder, I would adjust the special volume control on the mixer output feed to the transmitter. If my station was louder, I would turn it down to try to match the other station. It took a lot of testing. I can recall working on it for many days and to all hours of the night, trying to get it right. So from 1956, here's an audio air check of me testing and adjusting the transmitter audio level on the air.
Repeat, this is at a 100% modulation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the broadcasting voice of the Palm Beaches, WDTR. Radio Wonderful. Stand by now for NBC Radio News. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is WDTR West Palm Beach. And now here is the news. We are testing. Repeat, we are testing.
As I mentioned earlier, practice is the road to achievement. The ability to read well in radio is vital. Reading aloud is a whole different situation than reading silently. And to record your voice as you do so gives you the opportunity to hear yourself abstractly on playback. You can listen very closely without the distraction of actually reading.
And we knew that when dawn grew fair, some prisoner had to swing. Right in we went with sole intent on death and dread and doom. The hangman with his little bag went shuffling through the gloom, and each man trembled as he crept into his numbered tomb. That night the empty corridors were full of forms of fear, and up and down the iron town stole feet we could not hear. And through the bars that hide the stars, white faces seemed to peer. He lay as one who lies in dreams in a pleasant meadowed land, and the watchers watched him as he slept and could not understand how one could sleep so sweet as sleep with a hangman close at hand. But there is no sleep when men must weep who never yet have wept. So we, the fool, the fraud, the knave, that endless vigil kept. And through each brain on hands of pain, another's terror crept. Alas, it is a fearful thing to feel another's guilt, for right within the sword of sin pierced to its poison hilt, and as molten lead were the tears we shed for the blood we had not spilt. The warders with their shoes of felt crept by each padlocked door, and peeped and saw with eyes of awe gray figures on the floor, and wondered why men knelt to pray who never prayed before.
Well, all I want is a party doll to come along with me when I'm feeling wild, to be ever loving, true and fair, to run her fingers through my hair.
At 13, an older friend of mine wanted to start a tape-syndicated gospel radio show and asked if I wanted to help. He had secured a building to house his youth outreach program, And he'd also secured a radio audio mixer board from a church that no longer was broadcasting. This thing looked like a B-29 with tons of control knobs and meters and buttons. Boy, the radio bug was biting hard. This thing even had 2 turntables. My friend had no idea how to operate it, but it was just what I'd been dreaming for. Stand back. My time had come.
It's time for Youth on the Beam.
We are more than conquerors through him that loved us so. For Christ who dwells within us is the greatest power we know. He will fight the...
Once again, we're here with more music, the best music this side of heaven.
Who can stand against us? He's the captain of our fate.
Here's Miss Georgia Lee with A Christian Cowboy.
The devil is a rustler, and many are his men who ride the plains and valleys, branding souls with death and sin, bringing the strains for the Lord.
Georgia Lee with The Christian Cowboy.
Coming up, it sounds like a good day at PlayStation KXBT. A jock, I think, needs to match the energy level of the music he's playing.
She's much too nice to rearrange. But she knows all that I adore. A lover and a ocean could never love me more. That's Bobby Lee on KXBT. Ooh, yeah, music for you, music lovers. Soundstage number 2. Love you more than whoa, whoa, yeah, yeah. Love you more than I can say. I love you twice as much tomorrow. Whoa, whoa, love you more than I can say. Whoa, oh, yeah, yeah. Dream, 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 dream.
On Jim Fergusson's Radio Dreams, one additional thought. I call this segment The Man with the Mic. It's one of those observations that one can only make later in life, because at the time it was happening, one's just too close to notice. I can recall 3 specific instances where my radio bug addiction was piqued, or should I say, where I was green with envy. In West Palm Beach, when I was growing up, there was a teen dance at the Civic Center, and I can recall going many times. I would usually wind up standing around the MC area. He would intro the records and announce record dedications. I just watched him work, and I remember that shiny chrome mic that he talked into, and how it sounded on the speakers around the dance floor. And I wondered if I would sound as good as he did if I were doing it. Well, they had special guest DJs from time to time, and once I was lucky enough to get to do it. I don't have any idea what I said at the time, but I do recall walking on air for the rest of that night and for many days to come. I recall another interest I had at the time was Little League Baseball. And at the baseball field, they had a PA system with a guy up in the press box above the concession stand. I would listen also to his voice ring out across the bleachers and field. It was strong and clear, concise and confident. From time to time, I could catch a glimpse of him holding this small green metal mic as he held it to his lips. It had a push-to-talk button on the mic, and you could hear a small click as he pushed it to speak. The speakers were mounted on poles around the field. They were outdoor PA horn types. His voice coming through them was very concise. I remember thinking, I could do that. I never got the chance, but I remember thinking about it. The third incident in my Man with the Mic segment had to do with an actual radio station in West Palm Beach. The station was WEAT Radio. Its programming was mostly smooth jazz at night. It was in the same building as WEAT TV, and they would leave the side door unlocked until midnight or thereabouts so people could come and go after the 11 p.m. TV newscast. Well, I knew one of the young camera operators, and he had introduced me to the all-night announcer for WEAT Radio. And from that time on, I would drop in and visit him when he was on the air from time to time. I would sit to his right side. There was a turntable console between us. I would watch him work, how he queued up the next record on the second turntable, how he worked the knobs on the audio board, how he held the toggle switch that put his microphone on the air. At about 2:25 or so in the morning, he would usually take a quick break, and he would say, "Come over here and sit down at the console. And if I don't make it back in time, open the mic and say, 'This is WEAT Radio West Palm Beach,' then turn off the mic and hit the switch to turn on the next record." Well, the first 2 or 3 times he made it back just in time, but the 4th time he didn't. And I was so surprised when I realized I was going to be on the air. But I did it, and it went perfect. He showed up a couple of minutes later and asked how it went, and I said, "Great," but I think he'd been listening to it somewhere else in the building just to be sure. I guess what I'm saying in this segment is my fascination with microphones is so obvious to me now, but at the time I didn't realize when I was around the man with a mic, I probably had that kid outside the candy store look. And then I was lucky enough to become the man with the mic myself.
Dream